the Braves and Mets, the Diamondbacks' worst nightmare happens. Both teams win. The Diamondbacks are out, which makes them and the Rangers, who were the in the World Series last year, they both missed the playoffs. Absolutely insane. Will, I'll go to you first on this one. That first game was potentially number one, the game of the year, and number two was absolutely bonkers. And funnily enough, I had just gotten home from work, and I think it was the eighth inning I started watching, which was a good time to watch. But I feel like both of those teams deserve to lose that game at some points.
Both managers try the good old, hey, my closer can get 2 innings, a 2 inning save, and both of them were like, no, we can't.
Yeah,
It's really this bullpen blowout for both teams, and it's a little concerning, I think, if you're a Braves fan, because this is the second blowout for Iglesias in like a week.
and I was gonna add to that point. Not only were the managers doing their best, but Edwin Diaz.
That
If
freaking
they would have lost that game and got swept and missed the playoffs after he didn't cover first base, which led to 4 runs for the Braves, where they took the lead in the bottom of the eighth. Like, thank God for him, Lindor bailed him out, because that would have been an all-time fumble. Alonso makes a great diving play on the first baseline with 2 outs, and and Edwin Diaz is admiring the play. And then he hits the next batter. Then Albies hits a double off the ball, clears the bases. But again, Lindor comes back and hits a 2-run shot. They take the lead, and Diaz actually comes back out for the bottom of the ninth, which it's going to be interesting with him, because I don't know how many pitches he ended up with today, but he pitched like 20. He had like 25 pitches yesterday.
he's not pitching tomorrow. There's no
Yeah,
way.
so in a 3-game series, that gets a little bit dicey. And apparently he was going to come out of the game after the eighth, and he requested to come in. So that'll be something. Braves win the next one though, and a very much less entertaining game. But I mean, John, what is your take on this whole situation? Like, I feel like for me, looking at the three teams, I would not have had the Diamondbacks out.
Honestly, it kind of makes me wonder if last year was a total fluke.
I,
That's where I'm
Eventually.
at. Just simply because, like, did the both they and the Rangers, did they both just get hot at the right time and then ride that wave all the way to the World Series? I mean, I think this kind of proves it, especially with and their pitching really let them down this year. Honestly, I think that their bats really bounced back, but overall, just a disappointing season for the Diamondbacks. I'm not surprised. I didn't even have them in the playoffs. I don't even think from at the beginning of the season.
That's an
Um,
understatement to say their offense bounced back.
well, I mean, I'm just saying.
Well, they went
It
from like what, a minus like 4 run differential last year to having the most runs in baseball this year.
well,
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you look, we've pounded it into the ground a billion times. I mean, their pitching is what is having them, out of the playoffs right now. Um, they led the league in runs scored, and it was never about the offense. It was always about the pitching. That Montgomery signing got worse and worse as the season went on, and their bullpen was just not very good. And here we are. And it's crazy because, again, I won about a month ago. We were looking at these teams, and they were all kind of clumped. And we didn't even really have the Diamondbacks in the conversation of they're going to fall out of this. It was going to be either the Braves get in or the Mets get on that third spot. They started losing in the month of September and were never able to recover. And again, you look at the pedigree of that offense. You look what they did last year, pitching wise, in the postseason, and it's kind of crazy that they're missing the playoffs. But the Mets got hot, and the Braves got not as hot as the Mets in September, but they played good baseball in September, and they make it in. All of them end with 89 wins, but the tiebreakers do not go the Diamondbacks' way, and they're out. It's just insane to me that this happened. Honestly, like I don't know if there's really any other way to explain it, and especially if the Rangers, you can kind of understand because we had questions about their pitching coming into the year because of how injured they were, DeGrom being out for most of the year. Um, you could kind of see that there, but for the Diamondbacks, there's really no excuse. They just didn't get in. They didn't play well in September, and that'll do it. But Yeah,
I think in the offseason we're going to be asking the question: how do those two teams bounce back from going from the World Series one year to being out of the playoffs the next? And I
That's
think that's
easy.
going to be a big discussion point for us uh, as spring training approaches in February. But yeah,
I mean, offensively, again, I mean, and the Diamondbacks are young for the most part, so they'll get a lot of the same pieces back, but they have to shore up that
Christian
pitching
Walker is
staff.
a free agent,
Yeah, that's going to be big, and I don't
and
know.
Jock Peterson has a mutual option, I believe.
I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think obviously the Christian Walker contract is going to be a big deal. See what happens there. They have to retain him. And if
I don't
they,
know about that. Honestly,
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if a team like the Yankees went
oh,
after Walker because of Anthony Rizzo having these injury issues
I,
recently.
I mean, Walker is going to be a hot commodity. Like, don't get me wrong on that. I just think from the Diamondback standpoint,
Cardinals want him.
yeah, like
Well, yeah, they announced their parting ways with
yeah,
Goldschmidt.
you need like
That's another
As they
big
should.
market team.
The
No, I don't
Cardinals need it.
disagree with that, but still,
The Mariners, I keep saying they need a damn first baseman. They if they would have got
They
Vladdy,
need
they'd
a
be in the
damn
playoffs.
offense. Let's be honest.
I was about to say that they need a bat first of all.
Um,
Just any sort of wooden stick, and then they
How
go
about
from
you go to
there.
Louisville Bats or whatever and just order a bat and just ship it to Seattle and say you need this.
look, he's going to be a hot commodity, but if the Diamondbacks can find a way to keep him, they keep the rest of the offensive core somewhat the same. You know, if they add a name in free agency, or I mean, like somebody just needs to step up next year, they'll be back in the playoffs. But I mean, the pitching again, we've pounded this into the dirt a
How
billion times.
about their overrated young center fielder that is making millions upon millions?
He'll have time. He bounced back in the second half of the season in some cases.
Julio
He'll be
does need to
back.
figure out his first halves. That's one thing. These past 2 years, he's had really, really bad first halves, and then he's gone off a bit on the second half. The only problem was this year he was hurt, so he needs to figure out how to be more consistent.
I will say, looking at, we'll kind of transition this into the wild card games we have coming up. Looking at the Braves and the Mets, I think I posed this question to you guys maybe a month ago, and I want to see if your answers changed. If you're the Brewers or the Padres, who do you fear more, the Braves and the Mets? Because I mean, the
I
Braves
fear
get
the
in,
Mets
but
more.
yeah, I agree, and I think the Braves like they got in, but there's a lot of
So sorry,
questions.
I want to go off a little
Neither.
bit on the Braves situation. I'm not gonna go quite as uh maybe ranting as I would have before because now there is potentially a Sale injury with his back spasms and he's day to day. And potentially this could have been happening as early as September 19th, as it seems like there was a dip in his velocity in the last two innings of his outing that day where he left the game with his fastball topping out about 90 instead of 94. Supposedly, that was also because of some back discomfort. So this wasn't simply just holding him back to just get him to get them as in the Braves into the postseason. It was also a matter of trying to rest his back, unless of course they faced elimination and they needed him to pitch. Well, they faced elimination today and he wasn't available. And if he can't pitch tomorrow, they're basically forced to pitch Max Fried on short rest. So the Braves are just in this boatload of this problem right now, pitching wise. It feels like after the issues the bullpens had recently, and of course what they did today, and now your pitching staff is very, very light, along with an offense that is very, very lackluster. This Braves team is maybe screwed a little bit because of the hurricane and not setting up their roster correctly, but the Sale injury could very well be the death of them.
I mean, do you think though, like that clutch factor we kind of seen it today, it's still there, and you know, I was really the one that preached this, but they have that postseason experience. Like they're not
I
in a
think
great situation, and they're also playing a really good damn team.
they're
But
facing a Padres team that also has some postseason experience. I think is the counter to that too.
yeah,
Um, and I
you
don't
know,
think this doubleheader
Well,
gave the Braves any momentum.
yeah,
well, they're also facing a Padres team that is coming off of, in my opinion, what they could have won the division uh, in the NL West. They were that good. So in terms of what the Braves are up against, you got to look at it like this: the fact that you got in at all with all these injuries that that you've had. I mean, we wrote them off a long time ago. I didn't think they
Yeah.
were going to get in. I really didn't.
I,
So I would say this is a success for them.
I was kind of under the assumption, and I think I carried this for a while, that until they prove me otherwise, they'll get in. They'll somehow get in, and I believed that until like August, and I was like, "Damn, they actually might not get in." But they clawed their way back into it, and I don't know. I mean, do you guys think this is more like? I think this is kind of an obvious answer, and it's a little bit rhetorical. But is this more on the Braves playing their way in, or the Diamondbacks playing their way out?
The second,
Probably a little bit of both.
the
Yeah,
Because
latter.
the Diamondbacks were not in it for about half the season, and then they absolutely took off in the second half. The Braves, on the other hand, had it and lost it nearly complete. Like they were 4 or 5 games up in the first wild card spot. So it's hard to say the Diamondbacks played their way out of it when they weren't really in it for a lot of the season. But I absolutely think the Braves nearly played. They were the team that nearly played their way out of it. They just were able to hold on at the end.
yeah. And again, I mean, the Braves played they played well enough to get in. And that's really all you have to do. And I think, they got a little bit lucky in the sense that the Mets win that game one, and they obviously go pretty bench heavy in that game too. Um, and
One thing, if I'm the Diamondbacks, if I'm a Diamondbacks fan, it is rough tonight
oh yeah,
because just imagine that. Like you needed either of those teams to sweep this doubleheader. If they split, you're done. So
yeah,
that's
And
just
it's hard
rough.
to sweep a doubleheader though. So I felt like immediately being
Exactly.
in this situation, their back was against the wall. The 2 games in this last week, it's going to come down to for the Diamondbacks fans are going to look back on are blowing that 8-0 lead against the Brewers and the first inning in the first game of the Padres series where they gave the Padres 4 runs and lost the game 5-3. Because if you take away the runs produced in that first inning, the Diamondbacks basically could have won that game 3-1 behind Kelly's strong outing. And in the end, this is a situation where because they all tied, they literally lost the season by a game. So they're going to nitpick and figure out what could have been that one game.
and this is where also, this is what's so great about sports is the baseball season's a long year. It's 162 games, but when you have three teams at the end of the year that are tied with the same record, and it comes down to that one game or that one inning or whatever the case may be, it makes it fun. And yeah, for the Diamondbacks, obviously, there's definitely things they're going to be looking at. Like, man, there's games that we choked in July and June that if we won that game we're in, and I think fans obviously look at that more than the players, but it's tough. And again, when you come off of, even though they weren't predicted to get there, when you come off a season like the Diamondbacks had where they get to the World Series, the expectations just get higher because that's how it goes. And then to miss the playoffs, like that's really rough, especially for the fans who have that hope that we can be a contender now. We have this young core. They've proven that they can get there. We're going to contend for years to come. And I think, look, they can definitely certainly be back next year. I'm just saying, I think it's very disappointing, obviously, for the D-backs right now, who definitely I thought were going to be a playoff team. I actually thought they could compete for the division, and that didn't end up being the case
No,
either. So,
I didn't think they could compete for the division. I mean, honestly, their division is tough because you not only have the Padres, you have the Dodgers, you have the Giants, who are all money spenders. So you, as relatively small market to mid market team in Arizona, you're you're already at a disadvantage here
yeah.
in their shoes. So I mean, for them to get in general, for them to fight for this division with Otani and Machado and Blake Snell in their division, just to name a few, uh, it's certainly going to be tough. I mean, I am not surprised at this point that the Diamondbacks didn't get in. I actually am more surprised that the Braves did
Yeah.
than I am. I mean, we're also not talking about the Mets here. The Mets at one point were dead in the water. Like, and that was early on in the season. So if you could have that argument too, but there was a point where we could have written off the Mets.
Oh yeah, for
No,
sure.
not really.
Well, I think look, they didn't start great, and look, we
Yeah.
knew about Senga and stuff, but
No one started great in the National League. Let's just get to that quickly. Remember
Yeah.
how much of the season we were talking about the team in the third wildcard spot barely had a 500 record?
yeah,
It literally, we just needed what teams would take off in the second half. That turned out to be the Padres, Mets, and Diamondbacks. And in the end, two of those three teams made it.
it's funny too because that was the narrative, and now it looks like the NL is definitely stronger than the AL when it comes to the playoff bracket.